I'm Kevin, otherwise known as Forum BX257, here to begin our old G.I. Joe toy review. And today I'll be taking a look at the G.I. Joe one-man vertical takeoff and landing craft, the 1984 Skyhawk. Now, the Skyhawk makes its first appearance in the comic book run, the old Marvel comic book run, in issue 24. And in the cartoons, it makes its first appearance in the first episode of the five-parter, the Revenge of Cobra miniseries, again in 1984. In the late 80s and early 90s, it was reissued as a mail-away, so you could still find this vehicle fairly easily. Another interesting note is the Skyhawk name. It was originally applied to a very, very large hang glider for the 12-inch line back in the 1970s. The Skyhawk is a fairly small, compact little aircraft. Unlike most other G.I. Joe aircraft, it doesn't take up too much shelf space. It's also fairly easy to find on the aftermarket, so they're still fairly cheap as well. Now, the Skyhawk comes with two synchronized forward machine guns, as well as two rockets mounted on the bottom of the skid supports. Now, the rockets have a really small hole, and the skid supports have a really small peg for those rockets, so it's actually fairly easy to knock these things right off. Of course, it's one-man aircraft, so it has an opening canopy and room for one figure. It's also fairly detailed in there. But the skids have a foot peg, so you can actually add two extra figures on either side if you want. It has a fairly large side plane / rudders, as well as a tail fin. And of course, it has the fairly infamous now turbofan jet. You just slide it upwards for simulated takeoff, and then back sideways for cruising. Despite the fact that this is a fairly iconic vehicle for the G.I. Joe, it also has a ton of problems. Like I said, the rockets are fairly easy to knock right off. The side planes and the tail fin, they don't really snap in there permanently. They're just sort of frictioned in there with these long holes and pegs. And of course, I only opened the canopy this much because even though you could potentially open it up almost 45 degrees, you really only can open it this much, because any more would actually put stress on the pegs which hold the canopy in here. These pegs are fairly easy to just snap right off if you put enough pressure on here, and that's mostly because it's on a surface which is actually angled. So the more you lift it up, the more stress you're actually putting on here, which is very unusual. That, of course, means that you kind of have to slide the figure in here. And there's actually a vent which you actually slide the figure's head into first. And it fits, so the figure actually does fit rather well in there, despite it being rather compact. But unfortunately, this is another vehicle which has a back peg, so you can't really put 25th anniversary figures in here. And another problem with this is the turbofan jet is only held in by this sort of a U-shaped clip here. And what I've done is I've just put some tape in here just to really hold its shape, whatever position I want. That's pretty much the only way you could make sure that this thing just stays put. Well, that's all the time I have right now. Please check out my Facebook page for more information and behind-the-scenes photos for these reviews. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for next time to see another 1980s G.I. Joe toy review. See you then.